I'm Jew, and I'm really lazy when it comes to animating, and when it comes to writing too, apparently. I write PG fan fictions the majority of the time, maybe a little PG-13 because of violence, but nothing that bad. I like to tell my little sibling named Olive my fan fictions before we fall asleep together. They enjoy it and actually beg me to tell them my fan fictions. Olive's favorites are my Soul Eater fan fictions. Now, they're way too young to watch the actual Soul Eater with all its blood and fan service, but they know the characters because I described it to them. Granted, this means Olive has a very biased view of Soul Eater, since the only actual episode they've seen are the first two Excalibur episodes. I promise this has a point, not just going on, talking about my sibling. So, I'm telling Olive about my fan fictions. And the first thing they notice is that Death the Kid is the main character in every single one. Even when it's a more ensemble fic, Kid always has the most going on. Another thing my elementary school age sibling noticed was that I rely on witches doing magic stuff too often. If someone whose age isn't in the double digits can tell that my stories, despite loving them, are super repetitive, then oof, I should change something. Now, a majority of what I tell Olive are not completed fanfictions, so they aren't published. Nobody else can tell how unoriginal all the ideas really are. But I'm here to point out how repetitive my writing is, in three stories in particular. I was being emo when I wrote these, so Olive doesn't know about them. Olive, don't watch this. Christian, also don't watch this. Nobody watch this. Is everyone gone? Okay, good. So those three stories are The Asymmetrical Goldfish, A Glimpse into the Future, Kid's Worst Nightmare, and the will be published eventually unnamed work in progress I'm calling Ace Kid Fic. They will be linked below, but I will summarize them and complain about how similar they are, and maybe give an uplifting conclusion to end on a happy note. Okay, all good? Glad we got this all worked out. I wrote The Asymmetrical Goldfish, or TAG, as I'll call it from now on, from August 2017 to November 2018. It's 6 chapters long and about 12,000 words, give or take because of author's notes. TAG starts with Kid getting the titular asymmetrical goldfish from his father, Lord Death, who I call LD because I don't want Olive going around talking about a guy named Lord Death. Kid absolutely hates anything asymmetrical, so he's disgusted, but too polite to complain out loud. LD gives this whole speech about how much care and effort went to finding said fish, and basically implies that if Kid doesn't like it, he will cry. Kid begrudgingly takes the fish because he loves his dad, but symmetry obsession makes him really hate it. He shows his weapon partners Liz and Patty the fish and cries about how much he hates it. If you don't know people can turn into weapons in Soul Eater, it's pretty cool. Patty names the fish Mr. Shimmers, and Kid spends the next 5 chapters trying to kill it, but it's immortal. He slowly goes crazy and eventually decides that the dad of his friend Maka, whose name is Spirit, was trying to assassinate his dad. That logic makes a lot more sense in the actual story. Kid goes to save his dad, but accidentally finds out that LD knew how much Kid hated the asymmetrical fish and gave it to him in order to essentially torture him mentally to make him less symmetry obsessed. This isn't spoilers, I made it very clear that this was LD's intentions from the very beginning. Kid, however, is very shook and runs into the desert to contemplate his life choices, as we all do. Everyone is concerned, but due to some circumstances, read the actual fic if you want better context, Mako, Liz, and Patty are the only ones that go out to find Kid. He's in a giant hole in the desert, which only he can escape from. It makes more sense in the story. So the three girls just stand at the top of the hole trying to get him to stop spiraling. It doesn't work though. So Maka goes into the hole and does some anime stuff to get into his head. Inside is a big metaphor mind palace thing, and Kid goes around breaking vases that are supposed to symbolize the trust he has in his father, his respect for him, and things like that. Kid gets to the last vase, which is love, and Maka stops him. She doesn't like her father, so she started talking about how she broke her vase, but she could never find another vase like the one she broke, so maybe Kid should keep his. Kid was like, damn, you right, and immediately snapped out of his internal crisis. The end. Yay. It's better written than that, but it was 2017, so not much better. I was like a freshman in high school, so yeah, yikes, no good. Well, the story's unique enough, right? And now, the future one. The name is long, so I'm going to call it Agate. So, Agate is in first person point of view. And that's nice. Everyone loves first person point of view. Not a single soul despises it. I wrote it in April of 2020. Lockdown just started and I was projecting onto Kid, very much so for this fanfiction. It's only about 7,000 words long in one chapter. A one-shot, as us fanfictioners call it. Anyway, Agate starts with all the Meisters, or the main characters who aren't weapons, inside of a room. Their teacher gives them a magic gas that lets them see the future. Ooh. The Meisters are supposed to focus on the evil spider team so that their school, the DWMA, can win a war. Soul Eater is a weird show. Can't recommend it enough, though. So, back to the fic. Everyone starts to see the future. Kid is not human. He's an immortal death god, and that's pretty important to the story. Because of his lack of humanness, he sees way farther into the future than he's supposed to. His hometown, Death City, is on fire. The more I talk about this show, the more I realize I probably should stop telling my younger sibling about this. But it's fine. So Kid gets real shook by the burning city and tries to find his dad, but ends up finding Excalibur, who in the show is ungodly annoying, but immortal, and is a weird-looking sword thing. He's supposed to be very annoying. Excalibur tells Kid that it's thousands of years in the future, and Evil has taken over Death City, because Kid watched everyone he ever loved die, so that made him too scared to ever befriend anyone again. And he couldn't defend his city alone. Not only did Excalibur blame him for the destruction, he told Kid exactly how his friends would die, and Kid did not like that. Even as a death god, Kid is only like 14. He didn't take very kindly to hearing this. His overactive imagination made him see everyone and everything as dead or falling apart. Which, I should mention, the overactive imagination was a complete headcanon. But anyway, Kid becomes real shook. He runs away, and his friends all get concerned and forcefully bring him back quickly enough, but he's still being emo. Kid sits on a ledge, contemplating his life choices, and out comes Maka. She gives a big speech about redwoods, the sun and fire and stuff, which metaphorically tells Kid, hey, so everyone's gonna die. That doesn't mean you have to ruin the present to save the future, because when the future becomes the present, it'll still be ruined. And not everything is set in stone. I would say it's better written in the fan fiction, but I'm not really sure. So Kid is like, damn, she right. And he stops being emo, and it's happily ever after. The end. Notice the similarities? Don't worry, if not, I'll spill it out later. Now, the ace fic, which I'll call CAF, because why not? As of now, CAF is about 5,000 words, but it's gonna get a lot more. It's also a first-person point of view, one-shot from Kid's perspective. How nice. Not similar in the slightest. I started writing it in March of 2021, so it's real fresh. It starts with Kid, Liz, and Patty getting their house all nice for their first sleepover. I made them slightly older than in the show, so Kid is 17, Liz and Patty are adults, but they're having a sleepover anyway. Their friends show up, and one of them, named Blackstar, brings a bunch of beer. Don't question how he got it. It's Nevada. What happens in Nevada stays in Nevada. The characters get drunk and start talking about relationships and getting scandalous, playing Never Have I Ever and stuff, but like the strip version. Very yucky. I should clarify, I haven't told Olive a single bit of this one. This is also why I made everyone older. Anyway, when it came to the scandalous stuff, Kid no likey. At one point, Kid no likey so much that the chemistry obsession he grew out of came back in full force. He goes in the hallway and starts thinking too much about candles. Honestly, the amount of times I write the word candles. Liz tries to help, but makes him even more emo and symmetry obsessed. Maka then comes in to tell Kid a symmetry metaphor and then flat out explain what asexuality is. Kid reads a book and is like, oh damn, she right. He stopped being symmetry obsessed and went back to slumber partying. Yay. And that was the end of CAF. I think with some of my repeated phrases, it's pretty clear how similar these stories are when they're at their basics. All three start with a situation that Kid doesn't like, i.e. getting Mr. Shimmer's seeing destroyed future and being in a slumber party. All three slowly get worse, and so does his mental state. Trust me, it does happen slowly, and it's better paced in the actual stories than in my bad summaries. In Tag, he goes from shooting the fish to get Blackstar to kill it to getting Excalibur to kill it. In Agate, he goes from being shook at seeing everyone rotting, and then he goes to Excalibur again. In Calf, his symmetry obsession slowly creeps into his mind as they start playing more scandalous games. Then Kid becomes real emo and separates himself from his friends, aka he runs away. His friends try to help, namely Liz, but it doesn't really work. However, Liz's failure at helping had helped Maka realize what Kid needed. Then Maka comes swooping in and says the right metaphorical thing to get Kid to realize that his mental state that's causing him to spiral isn't really the best way to think. And then Kid's all better. I've never been good at ending stories, so that's why the ending, for most of them, is really rushed and bad. But I'm trying to make it less so. For Kath, the ending is stretched out and bad. While all of what I said is true, it's the same for all three stories. But it's the meat of it that makes the different stories all with their own merit. The morals of the three are quite different. Tag says, it's okay to be mad, but impulsively doing irreversible damage to a relationship might not be the best choice. Agate says, don't focus so much on the future, make your own future. And Kath says, being asexual is normal. The tones are also very different. Tag was fairly light the whole time. Agate was heavy basically the whole time. And Calf goes from being lighter to heavier better than the other two, in my opinion. There's dumb jokes in all three of them, but different dumb jokes. Is it bad that I have the same bones for all three? Not necessarily. Yes, I am biased, but I enjoy all three fics. I'm a sucker for falling into madness stories. I could read a whole bunch of those. So reading 3 reskins of the same basically falling into madness plot, I enjoyed it quite a lot. When you get into baseline mentalities, that's when you start comparing Cars to Thor, since they do have basically the same plot line. But they're two completely different movies. And that doesn't make them any, worse than each other. And besides, back to me. I do have other Soul Eater fanfictions that don't fall into that baseline. They fall into a different bare bones baseline where Kid goes and attacks a witch and then something bad happens to him. Maka's not in those at all. It's pretty great. But even when I'm not doing that one, there's still random stories like the one where Kid orders a complicated coffee. Besides the characters used, that fic has nothing in common with Tag, Agate, or Calf. I even have a story where Kid isn't the main character, all the other 6 are. My point is, variety is nice, but also using the same bare bones to make a bunch of similar stories that are still, at their core, fairly different, has its own merit too. I mean, the classic hero's journey can be used to make a story better, and someone can watch Thor and Cars, get the same amount of enjoyment out of both. But then again, using the classic's hero journey to a T can also make a story worse. It all depends. I don't know. I'm not a professional writer or anything. Have any thoughts on this? Feel free to comment. Also, feel free to read and comment on the real stories that I described here. I think that they're pretty great. But then again, I am very biased. I can admit that the asymmetrical goldfish is not well written, but Agate is very, very nice. I was being very sad when I wrote it, and I think it translates well. You can really feel how sad Kid is. Not really sad, more of scared. Before I leave, the picture in the background is my original character Preed, original in quotes because he is very clearly Death the Kid inspired. There's also Jucifer, Anju, and PB&J in the scene. Preed is the son of the horseman Death, hence why he's called Ponyboy by Jucifer. Anju also asks what he's doing on Earth because his usual job is to watch over the souls as they get sorted into either going to heaven, hell, or purgatory. Preed is there because he doesn't like how chaotic Ju is, wants to put a stop to them. It's just a random scene from my comic. Don't question why I drew it twice. I drew one on my laptop, as you could see with my speed drawing, and then I drew one on my phone, which is usually how I draw for animations and stuff. So you can look at them both, be like, wow, that one's a lot better than the other, or vice versa. And yeah, I'm Jew, still too lazy to animate, and it's been me talking about fanfictions for way too long. Hope you enjoyed it, and auf Wiedersehen!